Well, hello everyone and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we'll be talking about the positive story of Africa. The continent Africa is a beautiful continent. We have 54 countries in it. But most of the time when you turn on the TVs, the stories that come out of Africa are stories of pain. At Painless Universal, we like to talk about the pain, but we also like to talk about finding your joy within that circumstances you're going through. There's a lot of beautiful, wonderful story coming out of Africa, which has not been shown to the rest of the world. My guest today does just that. She's a filmmaker, she's an entrepreneur, and she tells the story, the positive story of empowering Africans, the African women. She does this, her narratives through positivity that makes anyone or any parts of the world want to listen and watch what she has to say. But she didn't, it wasn't easy for her. She started from a little village in Limpopo, all the way in South Africa, to tell this beautiful story to the rest of the world. But let me tell you about my guest. Elelwani is the woman from Rwanda, traveling the world through filmmaking. She describes the most powerful thing that we have is our story. The African story of a bubbly girl who grew up in Rwanda. And most of you might not know, Rwanda is in South Africa and is now an international filmmaker. She had to tell her story. Her career has taken her to countries including the United States of America, United Arab Emirates, and Namibia. She wants us to understand the beauty the continent holds and why it's so important for us to use our voice, to use the tools we have at our disposal to tell a positive story. She's passionate about storytelling, young people, and empowering people from her own community. Meet my guest, Elelwani, as we share her amazing story. Well, hello everyone and welcome again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. We are having a wonderful conversation about the continent of Africa. My guest today, Elelwani, as I said in my introduction, will be telling us about her own journey and why she went into the journey of filming, telling the story of Africa continent, telling the story that people understand. When we overcome, helping Africans overcome their pain of showcasing their true potential. Meet my guest, Elelwani, as we discuss and why she did this. How are you today?
Thank you for having me, Anne. I'm all right. I'm sitting out here and it's a beautiful sunny day in Johannesburg. So I'm all right. Thank you.
Wonderful. And how is everything going? I mean, with the pandemic and, it's getting better, but how is it out there in South Africa right now?
I would say right now it's getting better because they've had like effective vaccine rollout, and the cases that they are recording on a daily basis, they are going down. We are basically recording about like less than 1,000 cases a day.
Oh, that's
so fair. I think that's better. But also, the ratio depends on how much tests are being done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Elelwani, I'm so super delighted that you joined us today. I mean, your story of your work, I was looking at it. You're a lady from, you said Limpopo to the world. So you are going on this journey, this lady who's from this little village, and now you're going to the world because you've traveled intensively. You've worked in UAE, you've worked in USA, you've worked in Namibia, and I'm sure many more other countries. And you decided to take on this real passion of yours to tell the African story. Before we get into all of that, you tell me a little bit about who are you?
So I'm Elelwani Netshifhire. I'm a filmmaker, and my passion is really about telling stories for women, about women, and the stories being ourselves telling those stories. And my focus is really on African women, as I've said. And what I really push forward is just using filmmaking as a medium to tell these stories. And I mean, I feel like the focus in the past has been so much on the struggles that people in Africa go through. I think it's something you highlighted in the beginning. but my focus is also about like telling stories about our joy, our beauty, stories about women as we are. Not that I overlook the daily struggles or the pain that we experience, but I feel like, as Chimamanda has said in the past, that there's a danger in just people knowing a single story and focusing on that, you know. And when it comes to me, I'm passionate about telling stories of the life that I've also experienced, but the stories that I don't necessarily see in the mainstream medium. But also, I mean, I've worked on a whole lot of different productions, international and local productions, but I've also done my own small scale productions that have gone to various festivals around the world, and we've done well. We've also been profiled by CNN inside Africa. I don't know if I can mention that, but yeah. So for me, it's always been filmmaking using filmmaking as a tool that can help us change the way we are as society. Like, I really believe it's a powerful medium, and it's a medium that really appeals to me, that I feel like, yeah, this is the way you can express yourself and inspire and also change your communities in any way that you can with those.
I love that, because this has always been my vision, because one of the things that Painless Universal is always passionate about is talking about pain, but also talking about the joy side of the pain. You know, living with pain, but how do you find your joy? Africa might be living with pain, with there's so much going on, with so much, you know, the climate, we have the violence, we have the food shortages in certain part of the world, there's still inequality, but at the same time, there's so much joy, there's so much beauty on the continent that always fails to get mentioned. And when we meet people like yourself, who is passionate about bringing out that joy that the continent has, as much as you tell the story, but you also bring out the positive side, it's always lightening. You know, when you look back, Awani, what brought you to the camera aspect? Where did you first pick up the camera? Because that's a tool, a skill in itself, to say to yourself, I want to go to this path. I want to start telling the African story. Could you tell us how that journey began?
Wow. Okay, well, yeah, that's, I mean, I was very close with my late brother. I mean, Dirangi VP. He was sort of like my best friend, and he would come, he was studying in Cape Town, and I'm from Limpopo, which is like way up north if you're looking at South Africa. So he was this older brother that I've always had and I looked up to, but he was in the science sector, you know. And it was only, I mean, he came back with like cameras, and we were using like those phones, but it was back then around 2007, you know. And then he had cameras that I would use, but I knew I could tell from then that I was good, or he would say, oh, wow, you're good, the way you make those photos. But I didn't think that it was going to be a career at all in the beginning. But then it was only after losing him that I became, I embarked on this journey that I wanted to tell his story. But I mean, you can say you could have used any other medium. It could have been anything else. I could have like somehow written a book or written something, I mean, about his life as a way to remember him. But also I would say, like, getting those little moments while I was in the village and having access to his camera also inspired me to then later on, when he passed on, to feel that this is, I think, filmmaking is the medium that I can use to tell his story. And just besides that, it was also watching, it was later on, I think I was around 17 when I watched a film that most people don't think could have like changed someone's perspective to become a filmmaker. It was Legally Blonde.
Okay.
After watching that film, I was so curious on how everything is put together. To be honest with you, where I'm from, where I was born, it's like one of those villages, like deep in the villages, where I didn't know any filmmaker.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did have access to the TV, but I didn't think that it was something that I could do until much later on when I finished my, I don't know, what do you guys call it, but it's grade 12 for matric, this side.
So you mean like we have the GCSE, you mean when you finished secondary school?
Yes, when I was now going to secondary school, when I was now going to university, only then, because I thought I would pursue journalism and communication. That was the field that I was more aware of than filmmaking as a career. And then I would later on just study filmmaking at the University of Cape Town. And I felt like this was my true passion. I think it takes long for some people to discover their passion. And since then, I've never looked back. I just wanted to tell stories, and right now that has been my focus throughout.
Wow. So when you think about it, what really excites you about your work when you think about the work you do?
I think what really excites me is seeing your vision come to life. Like, I mean, I've worked on other productions as a crew member, like as a script supervisor, but that has the thrill of its own. But when I'm working on personal projects, it's really seeing the vision come to life and feeling that I'm birthing something that I truly care about, that's gonna hopefully inspire, even if it's just that one person, hopefully more. But for me, it's like the whole process of from like just conceptualizing it to filming it and bringing it to life and just seeing the vision come alive. For me, that is the thrill of it all. And just knowing that I'm doing something that I feel like it's my purpose, because I try to focus on, as much as I want to entertain and educate, I always feel like my stories are also like meaningful. I really care about whether it's the shorts that you could have seen online. There was so much heart, and I love bringing people together who are just as passionate about storytelling and telling stories about, you know, ourselves, about real life people, not just just doing this for just, but like really doing it with care.
I agree. You know, if a young girl listens to these conversations now, she's asking herself, I'm a girl, I live in this village, and I want to do something I'm truly passionate about. It might be tennis playing, it might be, you know, football. But sometimes I think the skill of the gap is how do you navigate your career from where you are? You know, you always say to yourself, I'm this little girl from the village and I've come to conquer the world. How did you navigate your career to get to the point where you are today, to really identify this is truly the path I want to go on and I can make a success out of it?
I mean, I was having a conversation like this with a friend of mine the other day, that sometimes exposure is everything. And some people don't have that luck of being exposed to things that I was exposed to. Like, for example, you cannot dream to become something that you don't even know exist. So I mean, sometimes in Africa, or just in the deep villages that we come from, you may find that someone is born there, they grow up there for their whole life, and they never get to go anywhere. So it's so hard to even dream beyond that space that you're in. But I would say exposure and luck. And nowadays we have cell phones and the internet. So to a certain extent, it is easy, but it's still very difficult, because people who have access to the internet and cell phones are not necessarily the ones that I feel like really do need it the most. I mean, we all do, but there are people that I feel like there's still classism towards how everyone has access to the internet. Even in South Africa, there's like remote areas where people still do not have that. But I would say, because I also, from where I'm from now, we also have a foundation that I've been taking part in trying to like mentor young girls, so that they can, you know, dream beyond the space they are in, or have access to things that we only got access to much later on in life. So to somehow try to bridge that gap. But I think it's a long journey. And the pandemic has not made it easier because so many, everything just got a bit disrupted. So even when you say, okay, someone needs exposure, but literally, I feel like exposure and luck and meeting the people who would really see what you're doing and what you want to become. And I would say it's not that easy, but for me in my journey, it was also like I went straight from the village that I was born in straight to Cape Town. And that's where I started. And I would say the city just opened up my world. And I met so many people who somehow were willing to, like when they see the passion and the hard work that you put into your work, then they were willing to like push you forward and give me more opportunities, you know? So I think sometimes it takes that, but it's gonna be a different path for everyone.
It is, absolutely. And we just have to find what truly works for us and find our own path and sometimes you never know what your direction would be. You know, I have to ask you, because some people understand the African continent. I'm not understanding that there's so many countries in Africa, about 54 countries in Africa. You're from one of them. You're from the south part of Africa, which is the South Africa. I am from the west part of Africa, Nigeria. There's some people from east part of Africa, and then the central part of Africa, and there's so many parts. Africa is so beautiful. In your work as doing this film, could you tell us a little bit about the joys of Africa and why you decided to tell our story?
Wow, I love that. I would like to just highlight those that I've been fortunate enough to get to like interview other filmmakers around Africa for Africa in Dialogue. So what I do as a filmmaker, as a person who interviews filmmakers, I get to talk to people from like Kenya, Ghana, Rwanda, like amazing women who are like making films in spaces that people still don't even know about, where you can like think about an African country, but not a single film comes to mind that you will know. So I think for me, the joy comes from knowing that when I have these conversations with other filmmakers, we have so much shared experiences. We have so much in common, whether it be the lack of funds or the joy of wanting to tell stories from where we are from and our communities. I think at the end of the day, what brings us together is that there's so much that we share. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from, which part of Africa you're from, you will always have, I was even saying the other day, like, wow, so much shared experiences. So even a story that someone can tell today who's based in Ghana, it can impact me in a positive way, in such a way that I wanna change my life. And I could like make, like, for example, a story of a baked brownie. When I made that short film, it received so many, I mean, we got feedback from like everywhere, Botswana, Zambia, I know it's still in the South. Like, even when, sorry, I was going to say Kenya and Ghana and everywhere, but I was saying like making a story of a baked brownie, for example, brought so much joy because for me, it was about all women, all African women, not just women in South Africa. And even the girls that I have in the film, which was about 6 girls, we are all of them are from, different countries. And that's what I like about South Africa also, that I was able to have access to people who are from different parts of the continent to come together and make those pieces. And I think they stand so much joy in us working together and then go back and shape our own different communities that we're from, that we wouldn't have had like access to that in the past.
And it's really helped you. You've traveled quite extensively. You've been to US and UAE. So what lessons did you learn that you brought back home with these travels?
I would say also when I was in the US, because I was at USC, also still focusing in filmmaking. Where I mean, I first arrived in the US then, I think it was around 2015. And I was like, USC was this space that really made me feel like, I feel like I'm name dropping, that made me feel like I can really do anything. And the aim was for me to learn as much as I can in that space and work with different people. I've worked with different directors and learn as much as I can and come back home, not to try and chase what they call American dream or something. I know it's a metaphor, but to learn as much as I can and then come back home and tell my stories in the, like, as a well-equipped person. I know we are able to equip our own people in Africa, but it's different when you travel because you get to see what others are doing and how they work.
Yes.
And for me, I came back and I said, I think I can do it all. And since then, I felt that the best place I can be to make those films that I want to make, it's right here where I am. But I have so many people that I've gotten connected to around the world who I've learned so much from. It be in terms of you thinking about your story or technical aspects of it.
Yeah.
That's valuable to me, but also just knowing that the place to be is here. And if you truly want to tell stories of your people, you have to do it with them where you are. Of course, embracing the limitations you have, but not forgetting the heart and what you're really passionate about in the end.
Absolutely, I agree, Elelwani. There's one thing I want to ask you about your memories of traveling within Africa, because when I think of Africa, I think of Kenya, for example. I love the resort there. I love the people, all so different. The women, so hardworking. You know, you could tell a story from there about how inspirational, how hardworking these women are to feed their families. You know, I think of South Sudan, for example, because I've been there, and it was just such a beautiful place. You know, when I was on the outside, all I thought about South Sudan initially was just the war. When I got there and I saw these women, I saw how hard these people were working to get their country back on track. It was just so humbling. I really felt it. In your own memories, what have been some countries you could think about that gives you that memories and joy that you've worked there?
I would say for me, it's I think it's I would say, I know there's the world has a certain picture around Zimbabwe and Botswana, but for me those are like one of my favorite countries in a way, that I've gotten to experience the life. Even I felt like there was so much in common. They reminded me of where I'm from, like the heart that the people had, like even in the deep rurals of Botswana. It's a small country, and people say, oh, why are you going there? There's nothing there to see. Sometimes you hear such comments, but I'm like, you're there, but you feel like, wow, people are still so nice. And this is what life is. I mean, perhaps it's similar to what you experienced in Sudan, or in South Sudan, because I feel like people associate certain countries, especially maybe Zimbabwe, with poverty. And you go there, but there's still, people are doing so much to still stay alive, to fight on. But they're not just fighting every day. There's a bit of joy. They find joy in certain things. They're still happy to be where they are, and they're like really trying hard to still make their space a better world. Maybe the leaders may be failing them, but the general experience that you have with people, it's different. It's nothing you read in mainstream media, because obviously they have their own agenda. But I think my experience will be like, I love how I've been well received in these countries that I've been to by just the ordinary human being, just ordinary people that you meet along the way on the streets, or whether in a restaurant that you're going to, even after filming, or even when you're filming, just the people you deal with, whether it's the transport people, like, you know, simple human beings that you come across, and they still have that humanity. I think that's that I maybe to a certain extent is because it reminded me so much of home and where I was born. And I was like, oh my gosh, it feels like home. It feels like I belong here as well.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like it's different. So I guess we are all one.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what's your hope for African creativity in terms of not just within the continent Africa, but within the wider world? What's your hope for that?
I think I would say my hope is for us to continue telling our stories the way we want to and the way we believed like we are represented. So, I mean, for someone to think about when you say, when you think about African creativity or African story, I would want you to have like a different perspective than what you've been fed in the mainstream media, or if you just go and Google Africa, you know. So I would want us to be able to, with our stories as individuals from wherever we are in the diaspora, to be able to tell stories that we feel this is the Africa we know, and also do focus on stories that will change our world for the better, I think. And when I say for the better, it's just like just focusing on bringing any change that we want to see in any sector, because I think we all have to play a part. You know, we have a role, and no matter how small. I feel like at the end of the day, collectively, we can change the African narrative together. No.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Elelwani, I'm really honored to have this time with you because, I mean, if not for people like yourself, I think the people in the diaspora will start missing out on the true beauty of Africa. And some of them might not want to come back because they're still afraid with what some of the other medias are reporting, and they're nervous about, if I come back here, is this what I'm coming back to? Is this even worth my while? You know, a lot of people are considering wanting to move back, and the work you do really shines a spotlight that, you know, the continent is a beautiful continent, and we just need to keep doing more work like you're getting, empowering people to do it. I really appreciate your time. Any last words?
Africa to the world. We're gonna be telling more stories that are gonna change, you know, our space and shape our people for the better, change our communities for that. So I will be making more films. Hopefully you'll get to watch them.
I would be looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.